Hello and welcome to another episode of the Flatback 3 podcast, another interview special. I'm joined today by former Peterborough, Crawley and Aldershot left-back Jamie Day. But before we start chatting, don't forget to follow us on Instagram, like, share, subscribe and watch us on YouTube. But as I said, I'm joined today by former Peterborough left-back Jamie Day. Jamie, pleasure to have you on the podcast, mate.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you again.
Well, I'm delighted to be joined by you, someone that I've known for a few years, one of the best looking men in and out of football. Obviously, we're going to talk a lot about a different number of things across your career. But first and foremost, do you want to sort of introduce yourself in terms of your playing career, where you started and where you ended up?
Yeah, of course. So I started playing football when I was probably 4 or 5. I can't remember it, but that's what my parents and my brothers tell me. But yeah, growing up, I had a real passion for football. I almost became obsessed with it. And I do remember sort of being sort of 8, 9 and upwards of just literally, it's the only thing I ever wanted to do. I know you probably hear that a lot from people, but there was an obsession there. I look back, got into coaching, which I'll talk about in a bit. And now I've kind of got a better understanding of coaching. I realized that even back then that was an obsession. And that continued really all the way through primary school, secondary school. And I think that obsession with the work ethic I was willing to put in, I was quite fortunate. I ended up getting quite good at it. So it's probably one of the only things I was good at.
Better than quite good, I would say.
Yes, I mean, yeah, the school side, I did enjoy school, but the academic side of it, I was never a massive fan on. Not the most intelligent when it comes to my studies. So yeah, football was something that I wanted to pursue. 2 older brothers that played football, so I think they shared the same passion. So yeah, growing up down in Cornwall, it was something that I always wanted to do, always wanted to pursue, and I really started putting the work in once I realised that I did have a bit of ability. So yeah, from Cornwall originally, played for my local club in Falmouth United, and then it was when I was 13 years of age, I got picked up by a scout from Peterborough of all places, and it kind of my journey kind of started from there really. So I used to fly up at weekends. I used to go to Falmouth school Monday to Friday, and then at weekends, Friday night, I used to fly up. You couldn't get away with that nowadays because of the academies and postcodes and logistics and things. Back then it was fine. So they used to fly me up on a Friday night, spend the weekend in Peterborough, play the academy fixture on a Sunday morning, get the plane back Sunday night, and then I was back to Falmouth school, my studies on Monday morning. So that's kind of
amazing.
That's kind of how it all started for me, really.
So how did you get picked up by a scout from Peterborough playing for Falmouth United? Were they just in Cornwall at the time, or were they sending scouts to Cornwall?
What it actually was, there was a player called Matthew Everington. You'll remember him. He played he went on, had a really good career in the Premier League. Obviously got a move from Peterborough to Spurs and played for West Ham, Stoke, etc. So he's actually from Falmouth in Cornwall, and his uncle Tommy Matthews was involved with local football. Tommy played for Falmouth Town at the time. And yeah, he came to a session. I was playing for Falmouth United under 13s at the time. He obviously, thought I stood out. He made a couple of calls to people he knew at Peterborough at the time, just through Matthew, I suppose, who was his nephew. And it kind of went from there. Next thing I know, I got a call a few days later and asked if I wanted to go to Denmark on a week's trial.
Oh wow!
So I'd gone from planning to play St Just on the following Sunday to then I actually, funnily enough, I played Liverpool. That was our first game. We played Liverpool on the Sunday, and then we flew out to Denmark that afternoon. So it was crazy week.
That's absolutely insane. And in terms of like when you were playing in that, you're going through that sort of thing of like 5 days a week in Cornwall at school and then traveling up to Peterborough. What was that like going from, because obviously I'm from Cornwall as well, grew up in Cornwall, and there's not a lot of that footballer lifestyle in Cornwall. So what was that like coming back? What did your schoolmates think of that and your family think of that when you were flying off every week to go and play for Peterborough United?
As you said, it was, you look back now and you just think, how was it even happening? Because of the rules that are in place now. But I guess I took it in my stride. I remember really struggling to begin with, purely because of, well, as you said, that kind of growing up, that childhood you have sort of in and around Cornwall and then going and being exposed to a bigger city. I think it's probably one of the first times I've been across the Tamar Bridge. So, going in and being exposed to that kind of city life, I guess, and going from being the best player in and around the Kerno leagues to all of a sudden you're one of 18 other players that are all as good as you, all as quick as you, and you're all fighting for that under 16 spot where you get offered that scholarship, the YTS. I did struggle. I guess looking back, I did take it in my stride because I managed to get there. But I remember early on, I was a bit kind of rabbit in headlights. But that week in Denmark was amazing. I made some good friends. My teammates were great. And it kind of, I must have done something right because it continued through under 14, under 15, and then I made the commitment to move up in my last year of my GCSEs in year 11. But everyone from Cornwall, my family, my friends, they were all behind me, and they knew it was something that I really wanted to, pursue and really kick on with, because that I had a talent, but it was kind of like being able to have the mental strength, the resilience, and all of the psychological barriers that you face. You have to overcome those for your talent to obviously shine through. And thankfully, I managed to do that. I don't know if it's because my dad was just an old school Northerner that was quite firm with me, or it was just within, but I managed to get there. So it worked out.
Absolutely. And that actually links to the next question I was going to ask, in terms of what do you think it was that helped you get to that level? Because obviously, like you said, a lot of people will say football is the only thing they can see themselves doing, or they can only see themselves following one path. But you were one of the few that made that step and actually got into the professional game. Do you think it was the support network that you had around you, your own personal drive, or was it the fact that it was Peterborough United that helped you get there?
A bit of everything. The family being supportive as they were, friends all backing me. There was definitely something from within, that self-desire, self-belief, that grit, that resilience that you need to show. As I said, I don't know where I got it from, whether it was my dad or my brothers kicking me when I was younger than them and just getting me to toughen up that way. But there was obviously something psychologically there that, I had, which was, even more important than the ability I had. And now I've gone into coaching, I've realized the importance of the psychological aspect of the game or any sport. If you want to get somewhere, that work ethic that you've got to put in, that self-belief, self-desire, the sacrifices, the commitments that you've got to make. I think ultimately that is what probably got me to where I got to. And I say that because for sure, under 13, under 14 and under 15, they were better players than me in the youth team. They had more natural ability than me. I had a bit of luck along the way, of course, that's important, but there was definitely something psychologically that I had in my favour that I guess it was either drummed into me from a young age, or it was something that maybe when I went to Peterborough, I realised that I had to develop it, because if you don't, you get pushed aside. That's just a fact.
Absolutely, yeah. And in terms of, like, obviously Peterborough, like we said, it's a very strange sort of move to make from Cornwall to go straight to a London club. Was there any sort of offer on the table from the likes of Plymouth and Exeter, or was that something that you just bypassed by joining Peterborough straight away?
Yeah, I mean, I shouldn't say it now because I work for Plymouth Argyle, but yeah, no, I actually was at one of Plymouth Argyle's LTPD centres, development centres. So it was for players that were doing well within their local clubs, but they did have a centre of excellence. And I was at the development centre for probably 4 or 5 months, and at no point did I get any kind of opportunity to go to the C of E. Not blaming anyone, I'm just saying that's kind of how it worked. And then I continued working hard and playing for Falmouth, and then obviously a different opportunity rose. So that's what I went for. And at the time, it was a really good opportunity for me because, again, slightly different now, but Peterborough at the time were in what you'd call Category A academy. So we were in with the likes of all the Premier League clubs, your Liverpools, your United. So I think that was because they brought through so many different players throughout their youth, through the youth system over the years. So I guess, one, the club were happy to invest into the academy and put the finances into it, but also I guess it was done on the amount of players that they were putting through into the first team that went on actually and had really good careers.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's something they've continued to do today as well, which is obviously great to see. Another question that comes to mind, and this is not to sort of to be dismissive of the position of left back, but were you always a left back? Is that how you got recognised as a left back, or were you playing further up the field?
Yeah, so I used to actually be a left midfielder back then, or left wing, what you would call it back then, and that continued really all the way up to Peterborough, through the youth team, through the reserves, and it wasn't until I turned 21 that Darren Ferguson came in, and it was probably at a time where the game was changing, and I always remember Patrice Evra signed for United at a similar time, and obviously Darren Ferguson, the son of Alex Ferguson, you could see what I guess he was trying to do with his group of players, as in us, as Alex Ferguson was trying to do with bringing the likes of Patrice Evra in. So Patrice Evra was the first left back that I can remember that really started to really overlap and almost play as like a high winger. And yeah, I mean, that kind of changed my game massively. I struggled to begin with because defensively I used to get found out. But that wasn't for Darren's mentality. He wanted to play attacking football. He wanted to play through the thirds. So it suited me really well. I was basically an attacking left midfield player playing at fullback. So it worked really well until we got to the Championship, and I struggled a little bit, but that was a big step up. But yeah, certainly, the success that we had under him also helped, but I loved it. I loved playing in that position because he encouraged me to play forward. So yeah, growing up, certainly was more of an attacking player. So yeah, from 21 onwards, I needed to learn the defensive side of the game, something that I struggled with a little bit, but I got there, I think.
Yeah, I mean that's amazing as in terms of like a transition story, because 21's quite late, I guess, to change positions as well, isn't it? So it's really interesting in terms of obviously, let's go back to that sort of time where you're coming into the first team. So at what age did you break into the first team at Peterborough? Was it on around that 2021, or were you already getting games before then?
Yeah, so before Darren Ferguson came in and that 21 stage, I'd actually had three managers before then. I made my debut at 18 under Barry Fry. He was the manager at the time. Then Mark Wright came in. Obviously, ex-England international, centre half, Liverpool, had an amazing career. Played a season under him, and then I had Keith Alexander. Obviously, Keith passed away, which was devastating. A few years later, but again, another great manager that I was able to play for. Played for him probably for a season, and then there was a little bit more stability when Darren came in. He stayed then for 3-4 seasons, and I'd probably look back and they're my fondest memories under him.
Yeah, it's incredible, really. So when you come through into the first team, obviously being 18, playing for Barry Fry, what was that like? Because obviously Barry Fry's got a reputation in football that is, I think he's universally loved by most people. But how was it to play under him?
Yeah, Barry was brilliant for me especially. Barry would, if we had a youth team game on a Saturday morning and the first team were at home, Barry would be there every Saturday morning. That's unheard of, really, for a manager. I know they might give it a token one now and go to an FA Youth Cup game or something like that, but consistently he was there every Saturday whenever they had home games and we were at home, and that in itself speaks volumes of him. So he was always very supportive of younger players coming through. Certainly when I was on my first year pro at 17, I think I became his best friend then because I became an asset to him. But he was great. He was great with younger players, and ultimately I've always got to kind of have that respect for him and appreciate what he did for me, because he gave me my debut. And I look quite young now still, so you can imagine how baby faced I looked when I was 18. So yeah, I used to get some some abuse from the away fans, and I remember
I
it
bet.
well, that my shirt coming on, it's baggy, all sort of all over the place. But yeah, I mean, I was only 18, but fantastic experience. I remember it really, really well. And then that was probably when my real football journey started, you know, going from that, and that was down to Barry giving me that opportunity. But
So let's talk.
brilliant character as well.
So would you say that he was the best manager that you worked under for you personally, or would you say that it was Darren when he came in terms of your development?
I think in terms of my development, and in terms of getting the best out of me and where I had my most success, and I look back with my fondest memories, we had back-to-back promotions under Darren, so it's hard to kind of look past that. But I guess for different reasons, Barry was great for me because he always believed in me, and I'll be honest, certainly sort of in the youth team, in the younger age groups, under 15s, under 16s, I remember having conversation with some coaches, and they were saying, we don't think you're right, we don't think you're good enough, we don't think you're mentally strong enough. They kind of thought I was little boy from Cornwall that's not gonna cut it, and that's just being honest. That's you know, and I had to change all of their mindsets. And Barry is someone that I guess always believed in me. I think he saw Matthew Everington go up through the youth team, reserves onto the first team, and so on. And I think there was like a little bit of a connection there. The fact that I was from Cornwall, left-footed, play on the left-hand side, used to play quite similar. So I think he always had a little soft spot for me. So yeah, I was quite fortunate with that. But again, different reasons. Darren was just unbelievable in terms of the professional standards that he brought in from what I guess we'd been used to. And that's not talking disrespect to, that's just kind of like the whole, it just shifted completely. That kind of, he brought in we had a physio, but he brought in a sports scientist, sports analysis, all of these types of things that we look at now and go, well, they're just standard things, you know. Back then, they were unheard of. So Darren brought all of that in, and the professionalism of the club, the team, the squad, and the standards. You know, they just went through the roof, and ultimately that's how we had success, to be honest.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then let's go all the way back to your debut then. So how did you feel? Because did you come off the bench for your debut?
Yeah, I came off the bench. It was Doncaster at home. And I remember I'd been training with the first team a couple of weeks beforehand. I'd also been to Man United and West Ham sort of previously. So Barry was quite keen for me to get an opportunity. So I knew it wasn't a last minute thing. I had an idea that at some point I'd be getting this opportunity. And yeah, he spoke to me the day before. I'd been training with the first team, and he said, at some point tomorrow, you're getting on that pitch. So I was quite well prepared. It wasn't thrown in the deep end. I was well prepared for it, and yeah, I went on, and obviously it was a great feeling, great moment. And I remember thinking, once I walked off the pitch, I think we got beat in the end. I can't remember, but yeah, okay. I remember walking off, and all I could think was, right, I want a bit more of this. Now I've had a little taster of it, and that, I guess, that drive just increased that little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, so how many games? Because I could have done my due diligence and found out. But how many games did you play in that first season? Then, obviously, as a young lad at 18.
I think I only made a few appearances under Barry. It was mainly when I properly would say I broke through what was the following season under Mark Wright. And that was a story in itself. Mark Wright came in. He didn't speak to me for the first 4 weeks of pre-season. Again, just must have came in, saw quite a young, physically immature, baby-faced looking Cornish lad. And I just wanted his cup of tea to begin with. He wanted senior pros, established pros that, he knew what I guess he was going to get out of. So literally, I was still part of the first team. I was under a pro contract, but I was just pushed to one side. Didn't speak to me at all, and it took me to play in a pre-season friendly against, I guess it was just a local club. I come on for the last 20 minutes. Didn't even have like a number on my shirt or anything. It was but in my head it was strange, because the year before I'd played a few games in the first team. In my head I was a first team player, but that's not how he saw it. So I had to really win him over. And I remember the following day I come on and did really well. And the next day, I remember him saying, "Look, I'm not too big to apologise. I had no idea, blah, blah, blah." And it kind of went from there. So I ended up getting a lot of opportunities under Mark Wright. And we didn't get promoted that season, but, you know, I learned a lot under him. Things didn't work out for him sort of as a manager at Peterborough. And that's when Keith Alexander came in.
And what was that like, going from, you know, Mark Wright to Keith? Was it a big shift in terms of like the way that you trained and the way that you sort of had to win one manager over, or was it start again, win Keith over as well?
Yeah, I was just going to say it was quite similar, because I had to do exactly the same with Keith. The good thing with Darren when he came in, it took me probably a few training sessions. With Mark and Keith, it took me a good 3-4 weeks of pre-season each time. And it wasn't really until I had that opportunity in a competitive game where they both, to be fair to them, turned around and said, "Look, you know, fair enough, put our arms up. I've got it wrong, but moving forward, this is how I see it." So I wasn't going to hold any grudges. I was just wanted to win them over, show the right attitude, and prove to them that I was good enough and I was mentally strong enough to be a first team player. So I knew that even through that period, I knew that, you know, I had loads of work to do and I needed to earn my stripes. It was only until probably I'd played that first full year under Darren at 21, turning 22, where I thought, yeah, I can look at myself now as I guess an established pro.
And in terms of, you know, like you said, you made that step up, you're like 18, 19. Were there other young players in the first team with you, or were you one of a few through those couple of managers and those couple of years as well until Darren came in?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So we had probably a handful of good youth team players that actually did well in the Youth Cup. We had success sort of in the leagues that we played in, not just the Youth Cup, but a couple of lads that I was close to got some good moves. Luke Steele, who's a good mate of mine now, he got a 500 grand move to United. Sean St Ledger, he got a move to Preston for a few $100,000. You know, nowadays that's a lot of money. You know, back then,
yeah, absolutely.
You know, God knows what that would be now. So yeah, they did well. So yeah, there was a good sort of, you know, bulk of a good dozen really that all had a chance. You know, and either pursued through Peterborough like I did, or got some, you know, half decent moves elsewhere. So, and that helped. You know, we knew that there was opportunities there, and when you've got, I guess, a handful of players, young, hungry players that are all trying to do the same thing, obviously that's quite appealing for a club and certainly a first team manager.
Absolutely, yeah. And then like another question, just really like off of what you said there, because obviously you've come through with lads and footballers, obviously you have that life where people come and go all the time. So do you still have a lot of friends and contacts from your time at Peterborough and your other clubs, or is it one of those things where you've got a small handful of close friends and that's it?
Yeah, it's that last one there. And I think probably if you asked anyone that's, I guess, been in the game for, I don't know, for 5+ years, whatever, that seems to be the way. And don't get me wrong, because of social media, that, you know, you still speak and like a few photos as a token one. But if social media didn't exist, yeah, I probably would only have about 5 to 10 contacts in my phone book. You know, certainly in the youth team, when you're living in digs with people, you know, that connection, that relationship that you form, you're part of something that you're all trying to compete and get to a place where you all are. It brings out the best of you. So you go through so much as well. And also when you're kind of a younger player trying to get into the first team, it's such a hostile environment. It's such a like a dog eat dog world. I think people look at it and almost just go, "Oh, they're so lucky," you know. It's not. I'm telling you, it's not. It really isn't. You know, the pressure. You know, people competing and fighting for each other's shirts, you know, so of course it's going to be like that. And you know, you hear of the stories where this happened on the training pitch, and it is very much like that, because how can it not be? There's so much at stake, you know. So it definitely helped that I had some good mates that were in a similar position to me. Not position as in left back, because if they were, I might have had a problem, but you know what I mean, they're all trying to do the same thing, and I think at times it helps each other.
That was my next question, is that did you have like a mate who was going for the same position as you, or were you okay in the fact that you were not guaranteed, but you were up there as a starter for the academy, and then you knew that you just had to sort of maintain your own high levels of performance, or was there someone, you know, sort of like on your heels all the time?
Yeah, I probably had it all throughout.
Mm.
I literally remember that Liverpool game that I told you about. I remember turning up and walking out. You know, when you kind of walk out on the pitch and just have a little look at the grass, what studs you're going to wear. I remember a load of the chirpier lads in the group. This is under 13, by the way. You know, I remember them shouting over, going, "Oh, well, Mike Welch, his name was. Oh, Welch, yeah, plays left back." You know, trying to like get into him, wind him up. But for me, I felt a little bit intimidated by that. You know, so I saw it then, and then obviously going up through the youth team, certainly reserves, and then into the first team, then you're always going to have it. But that's what clubs and managers want. They want that fierce, I guess, competition, because it does bring out the best of you. I am a believer that it keeps you on your toes, and it makes you get the best out of yourself, because the second you drop below that, you know, someone's there ready to, you know, I guess, take your shirt, take your place.
Absolutely. And I suppose as like an academy player at a professional level, it's taken someone's career, essentially, not just a shirt, because it's the difference between a pro contract and not. One thing I will ask, and it's not necessarily something that I think I would ask, but I'm sure that listeners would want me to ask, in that Liverpool game, was there any big names in the opposite team, or is it not anything that you really think of?
Yeah, I mean, what that went on and done well in, I've no idea. It was obviously under 13. Back then, you didn't do sort of team sheets and things like that. As I started to get older, when I went up to West Ham, to Man U, you know, I was going to these places. Some of them were on like $4 or $5 a week then. So God knows how much that would be now. So, you know, they were bringing these players in, and I look back now from those teams, you know, when I spent that time there, some of them have gone and played for United. They've gone and had really good careers. So I don't remember as young as being under 13, under 14, you know, and so on. But certainly once I realised you'd got past that under 16 age group, because that's the big one. You know, I know a lot of people still fall short a little bit once they've been first year and second year pros. But if you kind of get past that under 16 and you get that YTS, you're in for one hell of a chance then. And that's when you start to play against players and start looking across thinking, he's definitely got a chance, you know. And I can remember all the players that I played against that have gone on and done well, certainly from that under 17 sort of age group and youth team runs and youth cup runs, etc.
Well, with regards to, I think I'll skip ahead and then we'll go back slightly. In terms of those sorts of players that went on to do well, this isn't necessarily who's the best player you played against in your career, but in that academy stretch, was there one player that stood out and you thought, he's a player that did go on to have a really good career?
That I played with at Peterborough, you mean, or played
with
against?
Or against, either side of it.
Well, I mean, if I do both, the first one for me was the Denmark trial, and I've mentioned him already, Luke Steele. He was a year older than me, but my age group went out there, and so did the year above, and we must have done a joint training session, trained all together, and we did like a crossing and finishing session, and it was the first time that I'd ever seen a goalie sort of make the saves that he was doing consistently. It was almost like we shouldn't be scoring kind of thing. And I mean, he's gone on. He's not gone and played Premier League football for 15, 20 years, but he's played for United, and he's been consistently in the Championship with numerous clubs for 10, 15 years.
Am I right in saying that Luke went over to Greece as well for
he played for Panathinaikos, played in the Champions League. So he didn't quite get there in terms of consistently for United, which I know is something that I guess he wanted to do. He's a big United fan, and he got a big money move there at the time. But he's had a fantastic career as well. And certainly I'd have to say him, just for that first memory of thinking, oh my God, I've never seen him in Cornwall, you know, that type of thing. So I'd probably say him. And then it's a tough one in terms of played against. One thing I would say, that Man United experience, I was under 17 and their left back got injured. And they rang Barry and asked if I would go as a replacement left back. So the same scout that had watched Luke Steely sort of get his move, he was quite local to Peterborough. So he'd been watching and he knew a little bit about me. So there was obviously the connection. So I was obviously buzzing. So then literally the next day I was up to Manchester a few days later, we were playing in the Milk Cup in Ireland, which is a massive worldwide youth tournament. So, I mean, that team that we had, we ended up winning that tournament. We played like Panathinaikos, Bayern Munich, all of these clubs, and we won it. And I look back, and there was a real bulk of players from that team that went on, and I wouldn't say that became major stars, Wayne Rooney, Ronaldo type stars, but went on and played consistently in the Premier League and had good careers. You had sort of Danny Simpson, right back, won the league with Leicester, then he won the Premier League. Got quite a few appearances with United. Tom Heaton was our goalkeeper. Paul McShane was our centre half. Sylvan Ebanks-Blake was our centre forward. Fraser Campbell was another centre forward.
A hell of a team.
Yeah, so we did have some really good players in and amongst that year group, that team that went on and did really well. So it's no coincidence that we won that tournament.
No,
fantastic
that's amazing.
Experience as well.
Yeah, I bet. I think that's absolutely incredible. And like it's a subjective thing, isn't it, in terms of what is an amazing career to some people. But like I just pick one name there. Like Sylvan Ebanks-Blake is probably the one that, out of those names you dropped there, is probably the least recognisable for some people. But for me, like being from Cornwall, Sylvan Ebanks-Blake is like a Plymouth Argyle legend, because he went on to score loads of goals for Plymouth Argyle. And as much as I don't support Argyle, I knew how many goals he was scoring, and he ended up playing for Wolves in the Premier League and everything.
Exactly. So did really well. There's actually a story behind me and Sylvan. So Sylvan, before he got his move, similar to Steely really, before he got his move, he was at Cambridge. Cambridge United, so that's where he's from. So we had a youth cup, a youth team game on a Saturday morning, and Peterborough Cambridge, big derby. So even in youth team level, Peterborough Cambridge, big derby. So a few tackles, things like that. Well, I was on the bench, and I was a little bit, use my words carefully, a little bit annoyed that I wasn't starting. So I came on. We were about 5-0 up in the game. I came on with 15 minutes to go. Clearly had the ump. There was a throw-in. They had a throw-in. Sylvan's come in front of me, and I felt he gave me an elbow, a bit of a cheap shot. So I kicked him. I kicked out at him. Red card. So anyway, long story short, few weeks later, months later, Sylvan got his move to Man United. So when their left back got injured, obviously it was all a little bit last minute. So I'd gone up to Manchester, and they were all staying together in a hotel waiting to fly out to Ireland all together. So I didn't know anyone. Here's your room key. God's honest truth. Here's your room key. Knocked on the door, opened the door. Sylvan Ebanks-Blake. I'm sharing a room with Sylvan. So to be fair, Steely, because he's, like I said, he's a year older, he'd rang Sylvan and said, look, Jamie's come, blah, 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 he's the one that you brother. So he was good as gold. And we actually, we got on really well throughout the tournament. He was probably my closest mate, I'd say, out of everyone.
Well, that's all right.
Yeah, it's a funny story, really. But yeah.
Those sorts of forced relationships that become good ones, they're the best ones in a way.
Yeah, but at the same time, probably the most awkwardest kind of moment ever.
I can't imagine what that must have been like, seeing him open that door. But like that's amazing that you got to play with those players in that short experience. In terms of like, let's go back to Peterborough. You're in the first team. You're as a young player getting into the team more regularly. You ended up playing 102 games for Peterborough, which is no mean feat. Obviously, we'll talk about your other clubs shortly, but is there a performance or a specific game that sticks out to you as your favourite in terms of your best memory? Was it the game you secured promotion from League One, or would it be like, or is it even just like a wet Tuesday night away at like Walsall or something like that because you had a really good game? Yeah,
I mean the obvious ones would be to talk about the promotion games and the big games when you get into this time of year when you had your Liverpool, Man City yesterday. I think back to us and MK Dons game in League One or League Two. I can't remember which one it was, but I remember it was like top v second and it was a sellout. So all these types of games, amazing experiences to look back on. But one, if I had to pick out one that was always, I always remember, was actually Plymouth Argyle away. And it's for obvious reasons. When you play away game, I don't know what it's like now, but you used to get 50 comps, so the away team would get 50 complimentary tickets. Well, we had we'd drawn them in the cup. Now Tuesday, all the way from Peterborough to Plymouth on a cold, wet Tuesday evening, there ain't going to be many Peterborough fans that go down, plus family members that want to go down. So I remember Darren Ferguson on the coach, he had 50 complimentary tickets that we got from where we had pre-match. And I remember he got up and he just went, tickets, like to everyone. Normally it's like, yeah, I need 3 gaffer, I need 4 gaffer and that. And I remember Aaron McLean, we were playing cards, and he went, oh, I need 2 gaffer. My agent and his mate had come in. So I remember looking at Fergie going, oh, I'll take the rest. So he said, what, you need to, and he literally handed me 48 tickets. So I knew a load of people, friends, family were coming up from Falmouth, and the Argyle fans, a lot of them. So I literally handed, as I got off the coach, I handed them all to my dad. And I remember looking back, I was walking into the changing rooms, and my dad was literally, you know, like Jordan Belfort in like Wolf of Wall Street, just like handing out like all the tickets. And people were just sort of taking them, off they went. And when we had the warm up, you know, I ran out, and obviously all the Argyle fans, Aaron McLean, boo, George Boyd, boo, and then Jamie Day come out, and then there was just this massive cheer of like 48 people plus more that couldn't get a complimentary ticket, and there was just a little section of Peterborough United fans. So for me, you know, that was amazing, like memory. Probably all the Argyle fans were probably thinking, well, he must be real mustard if they're cheering it like that. But I actually had a really terrible game, which I'll never forget. But in terms of the experience, you know, it was fantastic to have that kind of support there. It was just a really unique and random thing. So yeah, that game there, not for the right reasons, which should be the football, because like I said, I had a bit of a stink bomb, but you know, the whole experience and having my family there and all my friends there was brilliant.
Let's touch on that stink bomb really quickly, because and you, we've known each other for a few years. Is this the game where David Norris gave you the runaround?
Yeah, I told you about it. Yeah, and when I say the runaround, it was the runaround. Yeah, big time. Yeah, and I think he was probably even more underrated than people say. He was I know he went on to Leeds and Ipswich and did really well and had a good career and played a lot of the games in the Championship. But I honestly do think he was underrated. He gave me a torrid time, definitely.
What was it about him? Because obviously when you say like you played against a really tough opponent and you say the likes of David Norris, who people would go, really, David Norris? What was it that he did that made it so difficult for you?
Yeah, I mean, he's always one that I bring up because I get that asked kind of quite a few times. And the obvious ones I've marked, as you know, I've marked sort of Ronaldo when we played United. I marked Aaron Lennon when we played Spurs. All of these, I guess, Premier League football players. And they gave me a tough time as well, I'm not going to lie. But at the same time, it was just a game where I literally wanted the floor to just swallow me up. You know, he's got an engine. So he was up and down. So every time I wanted to bomb on, he matched me in terms of fitness and pace. I say pace, he wasn't the quickest player, but in his football intelligence as a left back, because, you know, he'd play wide right and he'd find little pockets and get on the half turn. When I went in with him, he knew just to slide someone else in on the overlap, and just that game understanding and working out actually what's going on. He knew all of the things that I didn't want to do. So he started doing those things, you know, a real clever player. So yeah, it's one that good experience because I learned a lot, but at the same time, it was not a great game from me.
No, I can imagine. And in terms of like, I think we have talked about, like I said, we've talked about David Norris before in the past, but would you say he's the best player you've played against in terms of the one who gave you the worst time at left back?
Yeah, I mean that, and I don't know if you remember Zoltan Gira. Do you remember him?
Yes.
He played for West Brom.
Yeah.
Again, someone else who probably played in the Prem for, I don't know, 10 years maybe. I think he was at West Brom and then he was at Fulham for a while. We played West Brom and we were, I think it might have been League One, and they were in the Prem, I think, but it was an FA Cup game anyway. And that team they had was a proper ball playing team. I think Tony Mowbray was their manager, played through the thirds, and Jonathan Green in the centre mid just pulling strings. So not stars, I guess, but players that were just good effective Premier League players, effective Premier League players. And he, again, I don't think he ever really sort of done me 1v1, went on the outside, but again, dropping into pockets, and he's just causing problems that way. And for a fullback or any fullback, kind of when you're in a position where you don't know whether to go in or stay, it just causes you problems. And for 90 minutes, he just kept me thinking the whole time. And they're the best players that I thought, the ones that kept me thinking, players that are rapid, what they're going to do, I guess. You can kind of brace yourself and defend properly as you've always known. But it's the ones that kind of ask the questions. They're the ones that I always found it tough to play against.
Yeah, and then because that's a really interesting point, because like I've never played at a standard that you have played at, and I'll never claim to, but it is easy. You can see it on a Saturday and a Sunday at like even a local level. It's easy to read the ones that just want to stand on your shoulder and run behind. And you can translate that into the professional game, because if you've got players who just stand up front waiting to run onto something, you can mark them out the game. But if they come in, drop off and give you something to do, then it makes it a much more difficult 90 minutes. What was the score away at West Brom?
That was at home. We got beat 3-0 FA Cup. Yeah, we actually, a couple of seasons in a row, we got drawn against them. I remember the draw. Obviously, you're kind of wanting a big draw, your Chelsea's, and it was one of them going, do you know what? We're not even going to be able to cause an upset with them. They're just that good, but it's not one to go mental about. The top clubs, you want that kind of, that draw. But they were good at that time as well. They were an established Premier League team.
Yeah, I like that word we use, like effective, in terms of like the type of, like you said, they're not big stars, but I do remember that era of West Brom team. And they were that West Brom team that you knew would probably stay up each season. And it's when they changed from that and tried to have stars that they went a bit awry. So it's really interesting actually to talk about them in that way. But let's go to your first goal for Peterborough then, because you like I say, you played 102 games, which is incredible record, but also you scored 5 goals. The first one of those, what did that feel like in terms of when it hit the back of the net? Did you have a planned celebration or anything, or was it just...
No, I mean, first and foremost, the way you've just said that, it's embarrassing that, and at 5 goals and over 100 appearances, it's absolutely embarrassing.
Mate, for a left back, I think that's pretty decent.
Not a modern day left back. I think back then it was okay. My what they don't put is my assist ratio. That was quite good. No, I'm joking. No, I didn't score many, but obviously I remember them well. Great feeling. Wasn't expecting it. But no. Looking back, people say about regrets and things. I guess I don't really have loads of regrets. There's things I'd do differently, I guess, but that's one thing I look at and go, should have scored more goals. Really should have scored more goals. It's especially, towards the end of my career when I was playing under Fergie, and the way he wanted fullbacks to play, I definitely should have chipped in with more goals. But obviously to get a few in there, a few free kicks in there, a couple of important ones. I remember playing away. I think it was at Wrexham in the League 2 season. Similar time of year actually, where we needed a good little run just to kind of secure that automatic promotion. And it was a Tuesday night game, and when I managed to win 2-0, and I whipped 2 free kicks in the top corner. So didn't score many, mate, but I remember them well.
But you also got 2 in one game, which makes it even slightly worse that you couldn't spread them out across 5 different games.
Exactly, but it was an important game, so let me have that one.
And at the racecourse as well, which is an amazing ground on its night as well.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was rocket. And I say Peterborough fans not making the journey to Plymouth all the way down there. That was a long old journey for them. To Wrexham Tuesday night, big commitment. But I mean, because we're on the brink of promotion as well, so it made it even more sweet,
Yeah, I mean, like looking at your career as it went on, obviously, like we say, you played 102 games for Peterborough, which is incredible. And like, I don't think people can appreciate it as much being Cornish and making that many Football League appearances, because we don't have a Football League team near us. We don't have anyone in Cornwall that's near a Football League team. We've got Plymouth, but they're not Cornish. So to see a Cornish player make that many appearances is incredible. But you also went on to make other appearances for other clubs. You obviously had some time at Crawley. I might miss someone. Dagenham and Redbridge, Rushden and Diamonds was another one. And Aldershot, is that everyone?
Yeah, I mean, you're describing clubs now that I did actually go to, but that's where I guess my injuries started to really kind of put a halt to my career, I guess. The Dagenham one was a good experience. I went and played the 12 games for them to get them promoted, or help get them promoted from League Two as well. So great experience, great time there. The other ones, Rushden was a good experience. Just in Edinburgh, obviously devastating again about him losing his life. But what an unbelievable guy. And unfortunately, Rushden at the time, fantastic club. They'd been in the Football League, but when I was there, I dropped down actually to the conference. It's quite close to Peterborough, but I was desperate to go and play for him. I knew a few people. Lee Tomlin was there at the time, Aaron O'Connor, a few good players that I played against and knew quite well. And unfortunately, the club went bust, so I didn't get paid for the last 3 months of the season, which was frustrating. So
that was that season.
Sorry.
That was that season that you were there.
That was
when they went out of business.
Out of business. Yeah, so I didn't get paid for the last 3 months. So luckily enough for me, Crawley had just been promoted, and it was Steve Evans that got in contact, and I ended up going and signing for them as they got back into League Two. But by then, unfortunately, that's where my all my injuries had started to happen. But even when you say that about, your over 100 appearances, that should have been treble. The amount of time that I was actually at Peterborough, in terms of the length of time, I should have played probably 300 games, but because of injuries, little niggles, I'd play sort of 7 games, then I'd be out for 5 games, then I'd have to kind of work my way back in after 5 games. And it was only really one season that I could hand on heart say consistently I was there game in, game out, and that was the promotion season from League Two. All the other seasons, I think Mark Wright was like 25, Keith Alexander 30. So it was all a little bit part, really looking back. So that I guess, saying about regrets, that's something I look back and wish things were a little bit different. But injuries are injuries, and I used to do everything I possibly could to make sure I was looking after myself. But it would just want to be.
Yeah, it's something out of your control, isn't it? And I mean, we will come to talk about your injuries very shortly. But is that the reason that you ended up leaving Peterborough? Was it down to your injury record and that you weren't able to stay in performance?
And Darren Ferguson had been sacked and left. When we went up, because we jumped up from League Two to League One to the Championship, and such a big jump. Like people say, oh, it's a jump, but it's a proper jump. Going from League One to the Championship is massive. It really is. Some of the clubs that and grounds that you go into, you've gone from playing in between 5 and 10 to 15,000 to then play in front of like 30 to 40,000. You go to Newcastle, Ellen Road, all these places. So the jump was massive, and all of the lads struggled with it. So for me, in and out of injuries, it was never there. So great that I experienced playing in amongst it. But the main reason was Gary Johnson came in and he pulled me on the day after he got appointed, and he said, look, I've seen some videos of you play. I want a 6'2" left back. That's not you, so you're more than welcome to find yourself a new club. And it literally was as blunt and as quick as that. So I weren't, again, like I said about Mark Wright and Keith Alexander trying to win them over, I almost thought with this one, I just haven't got that choice. It's just completely closed book. And that's where Justin Edinburgh rang me a day later, asked me if I wanted to go there. It's half an hour from Peterborough, great little setup, and I just wanted to enjoy playing again, really. I had a few seasons of in and out of playing with injuries and things, so I just felt like I needed to go there and really kind of get that fitness there. And I had a great time. I got Player of the Year for them, and fantastic playing under him. Obviously, it was a bit of a sad end, but I'm pleased I made that decision because I got to move back in the Football League with Crawley.
Yeah, I mean, and then obviously Crawley is where, I guess, because you retired at Crawley, is that right?
Yeah, that's where, I'd had my first back operation at Peterborough, and I missed the full season then. But once I kind of played that full year under Justin at Rushden, I think I must have played 40 odd games. I really felt like I was back to where I wanted to be and needed to be, just to be in amongst full-time football, especially at that level, that tempo, that intensity, training every day. I thought I was over it. And literally, I went up for a header the second day of pre-season, and that's where, you know, my disc actually, and on top of the spinal fusion and all the metal work that I had put in a few years prior to it, clearly took the load for those few years, wasn't happy with it. And that's what led to my second op, which then led to my third op because I had a spinal fluid leak. I could bore you to death with it, mate, to be honest. It was just one thing led to another. And yeah, I didn't kick a football again. That was it.
Yeah. I mean, so let's talk about that sort of process in terms of like becoming injured in the first place, and then like, you know, how that all sort of built up into what you talked about there. So your injury was obviously, it was a back injury. So what was it initially? Was it an injury that built up over time? Was it an impact injury? Like, how did it occur in the first place?
Yeah, so it's a degenerative condition. It's basically a wear and tear condition that, well, as you'll know it well. It was just something that I guess in time, I think back to, you know, I try and tell our players now, they don't know how lucky they are playing on the 3G and how spongy it is compared to what we used to play. It was basically like a concrete with a thin green sheet over the top with loads of sand just kind of like brushed around. That's what we used to play on. That alongside all the pre-seasons that I did, road running, all of that, I think just in time, the L5 vertebrae just obviously started to give in, and really it was the sciatic nerve that was getting crushed. I had spondylolisthesis, which was crushed, you know, it was where my vertebrae had just started to slip forward on my sciatic nerve. And just in time, I remember playing with it for about 8 months, and it just gradually got worse and worse. And I remember thinking, oh, I've got a hamstring problem. And then the physio ended up going, no, I think we need to go and have a scan on your back. And I remember thinking, all right, but it's my hamstring, I've got the problem, it's nothing to do with my back, kind of thing. I've never had a back ache or anything like that. Of course, it turns out from the scan what was going on. So that's where I had the spinal fusion, which was a huge operation. And looking back, I keep saying about I've got no regrets, but I say I've like changed a few things. Looking back, I was 24 at the time. That might have been a decision I might have made differently, where it's such a serious operation to come back from that, and then to put your body through that level of intensity and training that's required to play, I guess, at that level, probably wasn't right to do that. And I guess I should have moved back down to Cornwall, started coaching, signed for Truro City, who were in the Conference North or South, obviously at the time. And and probably, you know, just gave my body that little bit of respite, you know, because clearly those 3 years after that operation, although I thought I was fine, it wasn't doing my back any good. So it's that's kind of like how it all started, really, and it kind of caused me a lot of problems. And it was through Crawley. I didn't kick a football for Crawley. Their fans weren't happy about it. I remember social media was just something that had just come out, and I got some abuse then. I remember going for my operation, and a lot of the lads saying all the best, blah blah blah, and then I picked comments like, yeah, we'd wish him all the best if we knew who he was, and all this type of stuff. And I remember just going, right, delete account.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that comes with it, doesn't it? So yeah, I didn't kick a football for them, so I haven't got great memories of my time there. Certainly not under Steve Evans. But it was one of those things that, you know, I needed to get myself sorted. Finished playing. PFA were great, really great. Helped me out in so many different ways. And then after about a year, 18 months, I managed to kind of get myself sorted, pain under control a little bit, and then sort of moved back down and started pursuing a career in coaching. And that's where we met. So
exactly, that's where we started our beautiful bromance, as a lot of people called it when we were working for the FA.
It was, yeah.
But just really quickly to touch on the sort of that you said about the decision that you made. What was the alternative? Was it to manage the pain and try and use the physio to sort of release the tension in your back, or was it a different operation? How would that have been dealt with?
I think if I had a different kind of job, I wouldn't have rushed into the operation. When you're an asset to a club, or I guess you're under contract rather than an asset, I should say, you're under contract, they're paying you, it's like a quick fix. So they want you, they don't care too much about, as great as Peterborough were, and Fergie was amazing, they still want their players fit. So for me, when I say I might have made a different decision, because it was such a serious operation, it was almost like, right, I've had this pain, this is the only way. I didn't even really explore, giving it more time and trying to see a chiropractor. I'm just throwing a name out there, or trying and injections and stuff like that. It was almost like, right, this, I think I had like a 4-year deal at the time, a 3-year deal. And it was almost like, right, if we miss 6 to 9 months of that, we've still got in for that. So let's do that. And I just kind of like went along with the ride, I guess. And I just thought, right, I want to get myself sorted. Once I'm sorted, I'll be able to play properly again at this level. So I'm happy to do it. But looking back, the complications that it caused, I think, I probably have made a different decision. And it's always some buts, isn't it, mate? You know what it's like. It's kind of, it's easy to look back, isn't it, and go, should have done this, should have done that.
Exactly.
And all of that. And I could probably sit here and bore you with loads of stuff like that, but it's certainly something that maybe I should have looked into more and not rushed into. But when you've got people like Barry Fry and all these types of quite powerful people in the footballing world saying, do this, do that, and you just go with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there's that, I absolutely know the pressure that you're on about as well from football clubs, because the job that I used to have as a sports therapist, from the opposite side of what you went through, managers will say, how long is he going to be out for? And if you tell them if you don't tell them they'll be fit that weekend, then they will lose their minds. So it is very much the quickest fix is the best option, even if it's medically not, just because they want their players fit. So I completely understand that. But obviously your injuries have led to you to where you are now, and to a friendship with one charming bearded man who lives in Somerset now. But you mentioned that you obviously pursued stuff in coaching. You're obviously working towards being a teacher now as well. But things are all looking really good now, working for Plymouth Argyle. Are you, what are the next steps for Jamie Day?
Next steps would be for me to get my A license. That would be the first one. Obviously, I've been coaching a long time now. I had got my UEFA B license a few years ago now. But I just feel, when you get to a point where you're ready to learn a bit more and develop a bit more, I feel like I'm at that point. I don't think I'll ever see myself going the academy route, purely because I live in Truro. It's another hour and a half to Plymouth. I'd have to move. We're quite settled here. And the role I've got with Argyle now, I really do enjoy. And as you said, the teaching is something I never thought I would kind of look into, but it's something that my line manager was really keen for me to do, just so I could deliver on the BTEC, on the education side of the course as well. And I found that interesting, because some of the units, the sports coaching, nutrition, these are all types of things that I've got pretty good knowledge in just through playing, I guess. So I'm pleased I've done that. So I think A license would be the next one, just to keep that kind of CPD going, that learning going. And I guess see where that takes me. But I'm quite settled now. But as you said, it took me a while, really, without getting the violins out. It took me quite a while to get myself sorted, I must admit, after that couple of years. Not just mentally, obviously physically, I needed to get myself right. I was in a lot of pain, neurological pain, and a lot of things you read and stories you hear. It's ex-footballers struggling with this. They poor me, I don't know what to do now, and I've got nothing to go to. That wasn't really it for me. Mine more was like, how am I going to get a job? I'm in so much pain. I just wanted my everyday life to have that health, I guess. So I mean, it took me a while to get there. Numerous trips into London to see neurologist specialists, but managed to get there in the end. So it's all worked out in the end. So married now, two kids that don't like football, which is a shame, but maybe they will one day.
living most of the dream until the kids like football, then it's the full dream. That's it.
Exactly.
And you had the honour and pleasure of working for the Cornish FA as well for a couple of seasons, alongside me and the likes of Glyn Hooper and Don Faby and stuff like that. That was all great memories, and it's, I suppose, stuff that you wouldn't have been able to do had you been involved in pro football still. So it's the silver linings of every cloud, isn't it?
Yeah, massively. And so many people, you've just named a few there, were great, really. Gave me an opportunity. I learned so much. And still do. Like, I'm not one of these people that, quite closed. I'm very open. I like to learn. like to develop. I definitely don't think I'm the finished article in terms of my coaching, and it's something that the more I can do, the people that I can be around, and certainly that whole Cornwall FA experience, and we're still doing it. I'm now the Cornwall under-16 manager, which links nicely into the Cornwall under-18s. All of that, it's made me a better coach, better person, and sort of contacts that, you know, and relationships I've now made, friendships I've made has been great.
Yeah, absolutely. I should have said that you're still involved.
But I do miss you. I do miss you. I'll be honest. I'm not just saying it because I'm on you're having a chat with you now. I do miss you. But we used to love it though, didn't we? We used to.
Yeah, it was a really good laugh, and I always am gutted when I think back to that run we had to the County Cup final when you weren't able to make it to the final away in London because I think you were at a wedding. Is that right?
Was it mine or was it my?
No, it wasn't yours.
I think I was the best man. Was I an usher at my best mate's wedding?
You were doing something at a wedding, but it wasn't yours because I remember that. Because it wasn't yours, I was trying to convince you to ditch it and come to London.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
But no, that was a great couple of seasons. Yeah. Great couple of seasons. Just as we start to wrap up, we had a couple of questions submitted to our Instagram and via my other co-hosts from the usual podcast. So one of the questions that came up, and this one was from one of my co-hosts, was who's the best player that you played with? Was there one person that you really enjoyed or saw a higher level of quality than you expected when you played with?
Jimmy Bullard I'd probably go with in loads of different ways, not just as a football player, just as a human being. He's a lunatic. You know, I've played with loads of players that you thought, oh God, like his banter and that, like he's a bit mad, but like Jimmy Bullard was like literally he's a lunatic. In a good way. Like high energy, day in, day out. I was only a young lad, so I was only like 17, 18, had been in amongst all of them. So he was, you know, he was a standout. How Peterborough got him at the time, I remember thinking, how was he signed from West Ham? Obviously, the big step for him at the time at West Ham. So he needed to get that football education, I guess, with Peterborough. So it served the purpose for him. But every week in, week out. And I always bring him up to my sort of players that I coach now, and they ask that question, and I bring him up because what Jimmy Bullard used to do, and I remember sat in the stand thinking, he is mad. Peterborough used to be like 3-4-0 down at home, getting booed, and in the 94th minute, he'd still be making runs, like 70-yard runs. Like even me at the time, I'd be thinking, why is he doing that? The 4-0, I just don't get. But ultimately, he was the one that got the move. He was the one that went on and had that, and that was down to like his mind, psychological mind of like his desire, his grit, and what he went on and did sort of, and the career he had is no coincidence. He was very good, but a great character. Like me and my mates, we loved him. You know, I could tell you stories about that, Christmas dues and things like that. Just absolutely in awe of him. So I'll probably go with Jimmy Bullard.
Perfect. I think we'll have to have a follow-up podcast where we just talk about your experiences with Jimmy Bullard.
I got some funny stories that they're great stories to
I think that's a good way to get people to come back for the sequel.
Yeah, they'll probably be interested in those types of stories rather than my boring journey, to be honest.
Oh, I think this has been amazing, mate. I've got one more question, if you'll indulge me, and this was from one of our followers on Instagram. Was who was your footballing hero growing up? Was there one player that you modelled yourself after, or you just loved watching?
Yeah, really, probably a really random one for everyone, and apologies that it's a boring one, but it's actually Chris Waddle, only because I'm a Sheffield Wednesday fan. So when I was properly getting into football, Sheffield Wednesday at the time were in the Prem. So do you remember David Hurst and other players, Carboni and Di Canio at the time? So we had some major stars there, but Chris Waddle, sort of as I first really got into football, cutting in, dropping that shoulder. You knew he was going to do it. You just didn't know when he was going to do it. So he was one that I always looked at and thought I was going to be like him. You know, when you were over the field playing, you going, oh, Waddle, and he was always my go-to. So yeah, bit of a boring one, but it's purely because I'm a big Sheffield Wednesday fan.
It's strange, isn't it? Because your one is very similar to my one in a way. It's like not one that a lot of people would pick, and you know, I think the obscure ones are always the best ones, because there are so many people that would say like a Ronaldo or a Messi or whatever, but actually it's your appreciation for the less, I say like sexy players in terms of the way they play that you sort of appreciate more. Because my favorite player growing up as a kid was Robert Pires, and he was in that Arsenal team, but he wasn't the best player in that Arsenal team. But I just loved watching him play.
Yeah, what a player! What a player!
Yeah, but you know, amazing. I really appreciate you making the time to catch up with us, mate. We are going to wrap it up there. Like I said, thank you so much to Jamie for joining us. I'm sure that we'll have him on again in the near future to talk all Jimmy Bullard stories that we can. But Jamie, was there anything else you wanted to sort of touch on before we sort of start signing off?
No. Hopefully it's not been too boring for everyone to listen to. But yeah, it's been good to catch up really as well. Nice to see you again. Glad that you're doing well, and yeah, hopefully get some more listeners. And yeah, maybe I can come back on sort of a few months time, or 6 months, a year. Hopefully by then you've got a big fan base, and
I don't know about
that. Tell some stories that people probably be more interested in. But that'd be good. Thanks for having me, mate. It's been really good.
It's been really good to catch up. Really good for me as well. Like I say, I've known you for a few years now, and it's nice to learn a bit more about your career, because it's not stuff that we've discussed in the past necessarily. So it's been really interesting. So thank you very much to Jamie. Thank you very much everyone who's listened, watched on YouTube, Instagram, Spotify, etc. Again, don't forget to follow, like, share, subscribe, etc. And we will see you soon.